As Dr. Mittal stated, our next two speakers are going to talk about a couple different aspects of these diseases. One of them is the nutritional side, one of them is the psychological side. Our first speaker is going to be Nancy Carlisle. She just informed me that she's coming up on her 20th year here at Mercy, which she must have started in elementary school. But she is one of Mercy's registered licensed dietitians, and so I'd just like to welcome Nancy Carlisle.
Thank you, Tim. I get to see a lot of different persons with irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel, Crohn's disease, and it's always a challenge to help everyone in their individual process. But I'm going to give you some practical tips of different information today that are general tips, but if you want some basic information that's geared towards yourself, we offer nutrition consultations available with private sessions. So, welcome you there. So, the symptoms that affect people with inflammatory bowel disorder are abdominal pain, and we mentioned the two different areas, the right side for Crohn's, the left side for ulcerative colitis. We have that bloating and that cramping. We have that nausea and vomiting, and any of us just get nausea and vomiting sometimes. But for Crohn's people especially, I see that as one of their major concerns. My daughter has Crohn's, and so I have worked with her for over several years, and you just see a wave of pain come across her face, and then, it's that quick trip to the bathroom, and just know that she's very ill at that particular time period. We have the anemia, and persons who have anemia get very tired, they're run down. We have both the iron deficiency anemia, we have the B12 anemia, and so those are two different disorders. The diarrhea, the frequent bowel movements, the quick trips to the bathroom, those are very effective and harmful for people and embarrassing also too. So, if you have those frequent movements, then the potential is leading to dehydration. So there's a lot of nutritional aspects that are right there that are important. So just to kind of summarize again, and even though Dr. Mittal has talked about this, the Crohn's disease is any part of the GI tract from mouth to bottom. And the most common problem is that it's that transmural inflammation. So this is like a deep wound going through the entire thickness of the gut. The ulcerative colitis is that colon involvement, but there it's just that thin layer at the surface. But any of us who have had a skin irritation, we know that still hurts for us. So the major problem then is that as we're dealing with this ulcerative and Crohn's disease, that they're all things that affect our appetite. And so when our appetite is down, we're going to be needing some good nutrition and some tips for that. So the first thing that we can work towards is a treatment plan. And the treatment plan is going to involve the nutritional deficiencies. It's going to look at improving the bowel itself. So we want some improved healing of that area for us. We want to improve the absorption of our medication because that's going to make us feel better. We want to improve the absorption of our nutrients. And for the persons who are diagnosed very young, we want to make sure that there's adequate growth for them. So we'll start out with some of the very basic nutrition tips. And one of the first things I think are important is to have regular meals. Make them small, make them frequent. Have a plan that you are constantly going to have some food available to you. Don't skip your meals, even though you're feeling that, it's bloating, I've just been to the bathroom. We still need some nutrition, and that's probably even more important to get some food and some fluids back in as quickly as we can. But slowing down how we eat. Our society is pretty fast, and we're on the movement all the time. Make sure that we take some time and slow down. Don't rush through your meals. It may be as simple as chewing your food extra times or taking smaller bites. And smaller bites especially are going to make that important. If you've got some narrowing or constriction of your gut, it's really going to be important that you have your food chewed very well and that you have very small bites for yourself. The next issue is that we want some high-quality protein. Your gut has been injured, and protein is one of the areas of nutrition that we can help with repair and rebuilding. And so we're going to want to have lean quality protein. It can be our lean meats, our fish, our chicken, our poultry, our turkey. Eggs are probably one of the primary nutrients that work really well, especially our egg whites. Egg substitutes could be used. Soy of any kind, whether it's miso or tofu, including some of the whey proteins. And so a lot of times we're seeing even some nutritional supplements being used for help for the nutrition aspect right there. But make it good quality protein and make it small portions for yourself. Caffeine is a stimulant, so I discourage caffeine for people who have inflammatory bowel disorders. It just makes your gut contract faster, and who needs that when you already can do that on your own? Sorbitol or other sugar alcohols are some things that we wish to discourage for you. And a lot of foods that are in that fat-free or sugar-free items may have some of these sorbitols or other sugar alcohols involved in them. And then carbonated beverages are probably not something that's tolerated by very many people. We think about having a glass of 7-Up after a GI distress, but make it a flat pop. Let it sit, let some of that carbonation go out of the system, or try some other beverages that are not carbonated for yourself. You don't want any additional stimulants that are happening for your gut. Now, here's a little humor here. We want to try and reduce what we call fat farts. Now, with that, as your body is not absorbing nutrients, some of the nutrients that are very impaired are your fat-soluble nutrition. And with those fat-soluble nutrients, they're going to go through really pretty quickly, and they smell. That's just all that happens to it. So some of the things that happen, we build up more gas, we build up more diarrhea, we have some bloating and distress. So being cautious about how much butter, how much margarine, maybe even salad dressings. Try hardly ever to have any fried foods in your diet. Limit high-fat meats, which would be the prime marbled meats. Reduce your high-fat dairy products, so trying to go towards the leaner, the 1% in skim milk in your dairy intake will really help to reduce that bloating that happens with the malabsorption of fat. The next that's important, and Dr. Mittal told you several times about fiber. Sometimes we have to add fiber, especially with the colonitis, that we need to have more fiber to make that stool very soft and so that it's not building up and giving constipation for that stool. And so fiber foods are going to be foods, especially like our fruits, apples and peaches, oranges. You may want to stay away from some of the berry types of items that have those additional seeds that may be irritant to you. We do wish to include some of the vegetables like the broccoli, the cabbage. For some people, they do build up extra gas, and if you're a person who knows that your bowel is bloating, then limit the broccoli and the cabbage and what we call the cruciferous vegetables, and switch over to carrots and peas and beans that may be more tolerable for yourself. We also include things like kidney beans, lima beans, whole grain breads, whole grain cereals, using some oatmeals, using some porridges that are just still from the whole grains, but have been very soft and softly cooked. If you're having troubles with contorted bowels, or that you know that you have a stricture in your GI system, then that's when we take away some of the fiber. And we don't want as much of the gristly type of fibers. We don't want the extra seeds and the extra bran, but we still want some of those soft, soluble types of fibers. And the soluble types of fibers are the ones when you add it to water, then it's going to expand. So oatmeal, rice, brown rice, those are going to be the types of fibers that you may wish to include. My daughter has some constrictures in her gut, and so one of her go-tos are brown rice. They are the oatmeals, and that's just one of her go-to forms of foods at all times. So fiber can be your friend and fiber can be your foe. You're going to need to know which is the most important one for you. There can be also some additional products like Benefiber, Metamucil, and having some of those products on routine basis can also just make sure that the motility of your gut continues for you. Now, here's an area that's under research, and many people are finding some benefits with what are called probiotics and prebiotics, and they help with digestion. And there's many ways that they help with the digestive process, and some of these foods are in this category like yogurts, kefir, acidophilus milk, buttermilk, sour creams, aged cheeses. These are truly in your dairy products, and some persons do have some lactose intolerance. But as we start gathering small bits of lactose and we get more and more into our diet, that usually some of that lactose intolerance improves for us. The reason that these probiotic types of foods help us is that they work with the digestive jobs of the gut. So they help protect against the harmful bacteria that's present, and sometimes those are the ones that are just giving you too much bloating. It helps aid in digestion, so they're actually helping that digestive process occur, and they significantly improve nutrient absorption. And because your gut surface area is injured, we need anything possible to help us to improve that nutrient absorption. And these nutrients that are improved are going to be calcium and iron, zinc, and magnesium. So we certainly want those. This inflammatory bowel disorder is an autoimmune disorder, which means that we need some help with our immune system. And so the probiotics are going to help us by communicating to those immune cells and getting them to increase their output. They're going to help the immune cells to actually get going and launch attacks against the invaders, and they're going to crowd out the harmful bacteria and other items by using up their space and using up their food. So very helpful with that. We need sometimes to use antibiotics, especially if we have fistulas or an infection. And so an antibiotic is great, but it also kills off all of the harmful or the good bacteria while it's killing off some of the harmful. So these probiotics significantly decrease the harmful effect of the antibiotic. So let's go over some of those different foods. And the first one is yogurt. And yogurt, we want it to be an active and living culture. And some of the cultures that you want those yogurts to contain are Lactobacillus bulgaricus. We also want it to have Streptococcus thermophilus. Now we hear about strep and being some of those bad things. You think about strep throat and hearing, but this is the family that's a very helpful one for us. But you don't want your dairy products to have any heat treatment. So you want these to be live and active cultures. And there are several good brands out there that certainly contain these. Dannon is an excellent product, Stony Brook Farms, and any of a lot of the organic brands are right there in excellent territory. Kefir is a food that a lot of us may not have ever tried, but I encourage you to do this. It was coming from the Eastern European area, and it is a soured milk, but it's much more friendly over time because it has the friendly strains of the Lactobacillus and Streptococcus are going to be present in it. And by having the kefir in our diet, you're going to have some of those digestive enzymes that are just going to be available and help you significantly. Another food area to try are some of the fermented foods. And other cultures have used fermented foods for many years in order to help to reduce the prevalence of gas and bacteria. Kimchi, sauerkraut, soybean products like miso and tempeh and natto. Those are all, and start trying them in small bits and see what your tolerance is. But because they are cultured foods, they're going to have different bacteria that are friendly to help us. We also have some designer type of probiotic foods, and they're everywhere anymore because that probiotics has just been that buzzword that's out there. So they're in our fruit drinks, they're in some wellness bars. They've even been added to simple substances like our pizza crust and gum. So we can find them and be available to us. But as we're looking for our probiotics, we want to make sure that they're living. Are they still helpful to us? And we can find them in several different forms. I prefer our food, like our kefir and our dairy products, but you can also take them as some supplements. And if you're taking a probiotic supplement, you want to look at the shelf life. If they're a refrigerated product, they should only be about 3 to 6 weeks. So you want to make sure that the place that you're getting is turning over pretty rapidly for them. If they're in a capsule type of the shelf that you're pulling it off, you want to see if they're a freeze-dried product. And those freeze-dried products are not going to damage the actual organism, but you want them to be about 12 months or younger for them because those viable organisms do decrease their population over time. And if you want to check out some of the better probiotics that are available in supplemental form, consumerlab.com is one of those resources that's available to us to be able to help with that. So the other type of food that is out there are what we call prebiotics. Now, these are the actual food to help the pros work. So they're the indigestible supplements or nutrients that are actually found and are being used as the food for the probiotics. They come undigested to the large intestine, and there in the large intestine, the bacteria that's present in there is actually going to work at that fermentation process. It then lives as a host for the probiotics to grow on and allows them to thrive. Now, there are also some certain health benefits just from being a prebiotic just in itself. And so some of our prebiotic types of foods are asparagus, great to be in season right now, our artichokes, onions, garlic, oatmeal, chicory root, which you find in many different foods as a fiber addition, wheat bran, barley, and flax, but one of our most famous ones I forgot to list, and that's honey. So one of our best prebiotic types of foods would just be to drizzle some honey on our food, and who couldn't like just a little bit of honey going on top of different foods. In our food ingredients, we're going to find them as different types of fibers like inulin, fructooligosaccharides, and that's such a great big word. When you see it on a food label, you think, is that something I want? But those are just simply connected sugars that are able for the probiotics to live on. Another one are the galactooligosaccharides, and these come as we take foods apart. And so sometimes they're just very simple digestive actions that are occurring in our gut that are allowing our food to be used better. Polydextrose is something that you do see in different foods. Don't think of it as a bad thing as you're seeing it on your food labels, but thinking of it as a food ingredient that's going to help the probiotics to continue to survive. We also see it as maltodextrin. We see it as a food starch, and that could come as from potato or rice or corn. In general, a lot of the maltodextrins, when you see them on the food labels, they are corn-based and very acceptable for people. Another one are the resistant starches, and so after we digest the food, it takes longer for them to take apart. So an example of a resistant starch comes from potatoes. We have potato when we first cook it as a baked potato or a mashed potato, and how soft and easy it is to be digested. But then we let that potato cool, we make it into hash browns or potato salad. It takes longer for that potato to be digested and come apart, and that's a resistant starch. Some of the benefits of those prebiotics then are to help us to enhance the absorption of calcium and iron and magnesium. And all three of those are heavy metals or heavy irons, heavy minerals, that are available but these are ones that are harder for the body to absorb when there's an injury in that gut lining. So we want to make sure that we take in adequate sources of calcium, that we have iron in our diet, and whether it comes from our red meats, whether it comes from a fortified cereal like cream of wheat, whether it comes from a food source of raisins, or we get tomatoes and other foods to help us to uptake those particular minerals are really important. So probiotics and prebiotics help us work with that. The prebiotic benefit also gets that gut to just function better and on a more regular, consistent factor for us. It inhibits the growth of cancerous lesions, and that's one of the unfortunate side effects of inflammatory bowel disorder is a cancer. So these prebiotics are helping us to protect our from cancer. We also will help improve the functioning of our immune system, and since it's an autoimmune disorder, this is really going to help us overall with the inflammatory part. And just lowering our blood cholesterol levels can help us for our future for our heart. So these prebiotic types of food are often added to foods like yogurt. They're added to cereals. They may be in some pastas. We can also take them as a capsule or a powder form. Unfortunately, some of the side effects are gas and bloating and cramps, which sound just like some of the inflammatory bowel disorder going on. So if we're adding some prebiotics and probiotics to our diet, we want to start them gradually and just see what our tolerance can be for them and increase slowly. Some other factors, and Dr. Carusco is going to significantly talk about stress and stress reduction, but many people, just a healthy bowel, if you're under stress, it tends to not like you. So irritable bowel certainly knows that when you're under stress that you have more problems with that. So learning different coping skills, yoga, and techniques can certainly help you. Now, as you're learning to deal with your inflammatory bowel disorder, some of the things that we wish you to work on are keeping a food journal. And a food journal is just a simple log. You can grab a little pocketbook or a little notebook and write down what you eat each and every day for a time period, and then discover what issues you might have been. Are you more frequently to the bathroom? Did you have some constipation? Are there some timing of when those issues occur? Is it 2 hours after breakfast? And what did you have at breakfast? Was that your cup of coffee that might have stimulated that bowel disorder for you? Look at the different frequency of when those issues, and see if there are some particular food triggers. My daughter cannot eat apples. When she has an apple, that is just an almost automatic trigger straight to the restroom for her. So look and see what your own particular food triggers are, and we may need to work those out. If there are certain whole categories of foods that bother you, then we may need to look at some of the nutritional impact of removing one of those foods from your diet would be on yourself. So if you have issues and wish to meet with a registered dietitian, we're certainly available for individual consultations. Some of my favorite references, though, are the National Digestive Disease Information Clearinghouse. And under that particular website, if you want to Google digestive disorders, this one will come up. It's the NIH, the National Institute of Health. And then Dr. Mittal mentioned the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, and they both have excellent resources that are available to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. That was great. Our last presenter is going to focus more on the psychological aspects of inflammatory bowel disease, and that's Dr. Gabriela Carrasco. So please join me in welcoming her, and then after that, her and Nancy will take some questions.
Good morning, and I'm so glad you all came here, and I have good news for you. The fact that you came means that you want to learn about how to deal with the chronic illness, which is the first step in doing better, in fact. I will start by defining what a chronic illness is. So as you probably all know, a chronic illness is an illness that it doesn't have a cure. It's never going to go away completely. However, the good news is it can be kept in control. And keeping it in control depends a lot on what you are doing as a person and what steps you are taking. The goal is to maintain wellness for as long as possible and have as few episodes of acute illness as possible. Also, the intensity of them not to be too bad when it really happens. And I think that's doable if you are doing a few things, and I'm going to talk about those during my presentation. I would like to first have you think of how did you react when you learned about having a chronic illness, of having either Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Do you remember how did you react? And the reason why I'm asking that is because the first reaction can help or be not be a good thing, depending of how you did it. And the reason I'm saying that is because some people will deny having a chronic illness. They will say, well, no, I don't have that. I don't think they are right. They are completely wrong, and not do anything in taking care of themselves. Others will become desperate and do nothing because they will say, well, if I have it, what can I do? It's nothing. It's the end of it. Others will accept it and say, well, it's not a good thing it happened. However, that doesn't mean I cannot still live a good life having that illness. So accepting it, I think it's one of the first steps that somebody can do in dealing well with their illness. And when I say acceptance, I don't mean resigning. I don't mean that you have to resign. I mean that you have to accept it, learn what it is, and then adjust yourself accordingly and trying to get the best out of it. As you know, the chronic illness might close some doors, but at the same time, I have to say it will open some other doors. If you think of it, these days, the chances of doing better are much, much higher than 100 years ago. I mean, if you had that illness 100 years ago, probably you wouldn't have survived very well, and you would have had a lot of problems. These days, as you heard my colleagues, there are many ways of handling it, of getting the symptoms in control. So one of the main things in doing well is also your attitude, and I put down a few quotes. And in fact, my favorite one is the last one here. I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% of how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. And I will try to prove that to you. And I'll give you 20 seconds to look around and find as many blue things as you can. So just 20 seconds, look around for blue things. And try to make a mental note of that. You still have 5 seconds. So did you find some blue things around? I bet you did. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to take the pen and write down as many red things that you remember. Red, not blue. How many red things did you see around you? Did you see any red things? Do you remember any? I doubt. You are looking for blue things, right? So I doubt you are going to remember red things when you are looking for blue things. So my point is, if you are going to look for the bad things that happen to you due to your illness, you are going to find them. I mean, no doubt about that. But I'm also sure that you are not going to remember the good things that happen to you. So what I'm asking you is try to look for all the colors, for all colors of life, and not just focus on only one. It's like putting, black glasses, everything is going to be black, right? Now, the question will be, what can help you cope better with the illness? And one of the things is that we human beings like to be in control. We really like to have control over what happens to us. Unfortunately, we can't have control over everything, but we do have some control over some things. And you need to identify those things that you have control over. And the ways to get more control, it will be to learn about your illness, and also to plan, to try to make plans. That will help, will give you some peace of mind. Then another thing that will be helpful will be to really actively take control, to be an active participant in your treatment. And when I'm saying that, is not only that you are following the treatment, but you really read some, learned about, came with questions to your doctor, and really be very active and very active and proactive in taking care of the symptoms of your life in general. Don't be afraid of becoming creative and do some problem solving. I'm sure if something goes wrong in your house, if something breaks in the house, you are going to be very creative and try to fix it, right? Well, I'm asking you to do the same when it comes to your illness. One other important part will be to communicate with other people. When we communicate with other people, it helps us, and it also helps them understand us. That's why I'm always encouraging my patients to talk with their family about their problems, so the others understand what they are going through. They are never going to know exactly because they are not walking in their shoes. However, that doesn't mean they cannot make the effort of understanding and helping. Build a support network. Make sure that you have friends and people and acquaintances, people who can help you. The socializing is something that's beneficial for many other illnesses, not only for the IBD, but also for other illnesses. And like, for example, one example would be that having a good social network also helps prevent dementia, if that's something that would encourage you to do it. Having friends helps in good times, but also in bad times. You are going to have somebody you can ask for help. And don't worry asking for help. Yes, some people will feel vulnerable. Yes, at that moment, you are vulnerable in some ways, but at the same time, the other people will need help at some point, and you hopefully will be there for them. Now, learning about your illness. There are a lot of resources these days, and there are books to read, and I'm going to give you a few titles at the end. There are many articles, blogs, you name it. You just go on the computer and you are going to find a lot. Or go to the library, and you are also going to find a number of books where you can read and learn more about it. Work with your providers and don't be afraid to ask questions. And my suggestion to you is to really write it down. Write down your questions. And the reason I'm saying that is because, at home you are gonna, I should ask about this, and I should ask about that. You get to the meeting, everything is going fast. The doctor may be in a hurry. You may be also in the midst of, finding new things and focused on learning about the new things that are told to you. Well, if you are going to forget about the questions you had at home. So write them down and talk with your doctor and the other team members and ask and clarify things. If you don't understand, you are less probable that you are going to follow up with the treatment. Learn the warning signs of the illness. And Nancy already mentioned to you to kind of keep a log of the food, to make a connection in between what you are eating and what kind of symptoms you have. I clearly encourage you to do that. And so learning the warning signs or the triggers, that will be very helpful because in long run, it will help you avoid them. Or if you know your bouts of active illness start this particular way, then you can intervene much earlier, and it's much easier to treat something at the bout of illness at the beginning of it than when it is in full blown. Learn what works for you. Try to remember and write down what has worked or what didn't work, because our memory can play us tricks. we think that we are going to remember this very particular time. Well, yeah, we might remember it for another month or two, but if I'm going to ask you about this 5 years from now, probably you are not going to remember much of it at all. So, put it down. Have one of those, there are some, like personal health records, if you go on internet, you can find some, or you can make your own, where you really keep track of it. Or just take a blank piece of paper each time when there is a crisis and write it down. Try to identify what were the triggers, what were the first symptoms, and what really did you do that helped. Learn how to take your treatment. Make sure you understood well how to take your medication and what you need to do. If you didn't, you are going to make mistakes, and that will decrease the chances of you doing well. Help your partner and family learn about your illness. I think that's a really important one. Some people may look at you and say, you look fine. What's the problem? Not knowing that you are going to the bathroom so many times a day, that interrupts your day, and that you are not sleeping well at night, and so on and so on. And so they are not going to think that, it's just in your head. No, it's truly something that's happening. And keep track of your symptoms and of the treatments. I keep saying this because I really want you to do that. Now, it's not enough to learn, right? I cannot become a good swimmer if I'm just reading about swimming, right? I have to really go in the water, and I really have to try and practice in order to become a swimmer, right? Well, the same about, the illness. You really need not only to learn, but also to actively use what you learned. And my advice would be to plan and try your best to follow the plan. And that's not for my good or your doctor's good or your team's good. It's really for you. One thing will be to keep your appointments. The second important thing will be to take your treatment as prescribed and to attend support groups. And why I mention support groups? First of all, you are gonna meet there people who have the same problems you have. So you will have somebody to share with who will understand you. Besides, you can learn from them, and they can learn from you. So I think that's a tremendous thing. Of course, people who have the same problem you have, they clearly are gonna understand you better than somebody who doesn't. Like my colleagues have said before, CROHN and COLITIS Foundation of America is a very good resource, has some support things there. It's in many languages, and also has a part for kids and teens. There is also my IBD.org, a foundation for clinical research in inflammatory bowel disease, that I think it's a good resource for you. Now, let's talk a little bit about stress. Now, I want to clarify that the stress does not cause the IBD, but it can worsen it. So it's not the stress that made you have the IBD, but stress can make the illness worse. And so we should look at some ways of reducing stress. One of them will be exercising, and that's good not only for reducing stress, but also decreasing depression, decreasing the risk of dementia, and many other and it has many other benefits. Learn some relaxation techniques, and there are a lot of CDs and books, self-help books, that can, be a very good source for it. Meditation, or what some people call mindfulness, that's another good way of decreasing stress. Develop your own coping skills. Humor, music. Many patients of mine say that praying helps them a lot. Others tell me that journaling helps, or breathing techniques, or yoga, or you name it. You have to just, again, be looking for those ways and trying them. Some of them may not be good for you, may not help you at all, but I'm sure you'll find at least a few that can be very helpful. Volunteer. Seeing other people doing worse will make you feel better. It sounds, in a way selfish, but this is the way it happens, And then also helps you put things in perspective. Can things be better? Sure. Can they be worse? Absolutely, right? So let's enjoy what we have. Again, socializing and faith and spirituality also, for some people, it's a place to go. And sometimes just taking a break and just be, not having to do anything. Just be and enjoy what's around you. Now, what I call small advice, and which is there are a few very practical points that I want to make to you. Really know where the restrooms are. When I was in medical school, one of my colleagues had some problems and needed to go to the bathroom very often. So if I needed to go to the restroom, I would ask her where it is. She always knew where the restroom was. It was the first thing that she located when she entered a building. And another thing she did was to sit at the edge. That's why you're sitting there at the edge of on the sides, so she could easily get away. Have some extra garments on hand. Have them in your car, or have a car kit. Add there some toilet paper, some changes. You may want to look at medical alert restroom access pass, and that probably is not so important here in Iowa, because people are really friendly and any business probably will let you use their bathroom if needed. But if you travel in big cities like New York or Chicago, they aren't so friendly when it comes to that. So you may want to consider that. And then whenever you go to the doctor, bring with you really the list of the symptoms, so you make sure you told them all of them, a list of questions like I said before, and also the medication you take you normally take. And I'm not saying necessarily writing them down, but literally take them, put them in a bag, and take the bag with you. And please be honest. And when I say be honest, I'm talking about honest about, how well do you really take them. Now, I would like to ask you, how many of you have forgotten to take their medication today? Everybody took their medications today? Really? Wow. Well, the studies say that 75% of patients are not really compliant with their medication. So I really got a very good group today. That's wonderful. Okay. Well, it took me 3 months to be really able to take one pill every day, to remember to take that pill every day. And eventually I had to become creative, which means I had to place my meds next to my coffee machine, because every morning I'm going to get a coffee. So this way I make sure I'm also getting my med, right? So please be creative. Another thing is also to be honest about what you really take. And when I'm saying that, it's, do you take any supplements, any herbs or other products that, you take them for CROHN's or colitis, or you take them for any other reasons, please let your doctor know. Sometimes these medications can interact, these supplements can interact with the medications that have been prescribed for you, okay? Let's move on to a couple of things that, I think are important to touch. One is the depression, and the other one is the anxiety. So what happens is about a third of people who have a chronic illness do have depression. Now, people who have IBD have about 50-60% of them would have depression. So I think it's really important that you know what the symptoms of depression are. Try your best in recognizing them and talk with your doctor about it, because it can impact quite a bit on the way you are doing. As you know, the body and the mind, they are connected like this, and one influences the other tremendously. So taking a good care of your psychological, emotional life, it's also important in taking good care of the IBD. And I put down a list of symptoms of depression, and they start with just feeling blue, feeling down in the dumps, having poor sleep, either not sleeping well or sleeping too much or eating too less or eating too much, feeling tired, not feeling like doing anything, having crying spells. There are a lot. There are a lot of symptoms. If you go on the internet, you'll find a comprehensive list of them. I put down the most important. Now, I think it's really important that you talk with your doctor if you start having these symptoms. And the reason is, one is that improves the overall, if you treat the depression, it improves the overall medical condition, increases your quality of life, and increases your adherence to the treatment plan. Besides, depression can be caused by stress or can be just running in the family, but also sometimes can be caused by some medication like the prednisone. So if you are taking prednisone and you are becoming depressed, it's something that's important for you to tell your doctor, because then the prednisone may need to be adjusted or needs to be changed. So I think it's really important you do that. And your doctor will decide what will be the best course of action, either, giving you a medication or sending you to see a counselor or sending you to see a psychiatrist, or, there are ways of handling it. Now, if you're asking, well, how can the depression can be treated, there are a couple of ways. One is medication, the other one will be counseling. Combining the two works best. But you don't have to do both of them. So one thing I want to mention to you, if you end up taking antidepressants, don't expect them to work right away. They are not like aspirin. You have pain, you take aspirin, the pain goes away. The antidepressants take time before you will see the full effect. The changes are usually subtle from day to day, and they are usually at full effect in about 4 to 6 weeks. So if you are taking an antidepressant for, let's say, a week or 2 weeks and you don't see major changes, don't despair, don't stop taking them, continue taking them. And clearly talk with your doctor about that. Now, the other frequent psychological illness that can impact IBD is the anxiety, and many people with chronic illness, chronic disease have anxiety, and I have here a few of the symptoms of anxiety. Is that feeling of fear, extreme fear of being keyed up, feeling on edge. When you feel like your mind is going blank and you become more irritable, you start having muscle tension, you don't sleep well, you don't eat well. Well, some people will experience anxiety more in the sense of a panic attack. Like suddenly they will feel like they can't think well, they are very fearful, and they start having palpitations, sweating, tremor, shortness of breath. Regardless of what symptoms you have, again, I think that's important that you talk with your doctor about. And for the same reasons, the depression should be treated, I think the anxiety needs to be treated too. And again, there are the options of treatment with medication, counseling, but there are other techniques that can be used in anxiety, such deep breathing, relaxation, meditation. I also want to talk a little bit about smoking, and my message to you is don't smoke. It will make your Crohn's disease worse, and it's the best recognized risk factor. And of course, it's easy to say, hard to do, right? And people who smoke or have smoked know that it's not so easy to quit. And how to quit? First of all, I think you need to really decide if you want to quit or not. And then, even if you tried before and you didn't succeed, don't give up. The more you try, the better chances you have to really do it this time. Find a good motivation. Say very clearly, why do you want to quit? What's your motivation to quit? let other people know. So in this way, you will feel more responsible. And also make sure you reward yourself. It's something that you are doing for yourself, but at the same time, I think we all need some kind of a, pat on the back and say, good job. So some patients of mine decided to take a big piggy bank, and, the money that otherwise they will use for buying cigarettes, they will put it in the piggy bank. And after a month, they will do something with those money. I mean, if you think, how much is a pack of cigarettes these days? I don't know, $4, $5, $6? Let's say $5 in 30 days. If you smoke a pack a day, that means 150. Not bad. So then, if it's very hard to quit cold turkey, so you can try to taper, like setting up the night before exactly how many cigarettes you are going to have next day. So if you normally smoke 10 cigarettes a day, for the next week, you are going to set only 9 cigarettes a day. And it's up to you how you are going to smoke them during the day. After a week, go down to 8. And just keep doing that slowly. It will be less stressful and easier for you to do. There are also nicotine replacements products, from patches to inhalers and electrical cigarettes and all kinds of, you name it. Ask the pharmacy and they will show you many of them. And if you still didn't succeed in quitting, again, talk with your team. Sometimes some medication may help with it. They are not going to really make you stop completely, but if you have the motivation and you take them, increases your chances of quitting. Now, I put down a few books that I felt were good books that can be very inspiring and can help you learn more. The first one has a part that also talks about the emotional implications of the chronic illness. The second one is written by somebody who has a chronic illness, who has IBD. I am not going to move the slide as I see some people are writing. And I think most of them, you can find them at Iowa City Public Library, if I'm not mistaken. And then there are a couple more. And both authors have been sick themselves and wrote everything out of their own experience. So it's not somebody who is, making up a story for you. And I also have an article that I found to be a good article, and I wanted to share it with you. And this one is Coping with the Chronic Illness, and you find it under the Clinical Center of NIH. And now I'm going to allow you to ask questions. And Nancy, if you can join me. So any questions? Yes, please.
I have some questions for Nancy. One is decaf coffee more acceptable?
It is more acceptable, but even decaffeinated still has a small amount of caffeine.
My second question has to do with sugar. You often read that sugar aggravates inflammation.
Okay, so sugar is a food substance of carbohydrate, and we would want to have more carbohydrates coming from natural food sources. So yes, there's sugar in fruit, there's sugar in breads, but incorporating sugary types of drinks, we would try to eliminate that. So things like Gatorade or fruit punches, that would just be not a nutritional benefit to us. Whenever we're looking for food, when we're having an irritable bowel situation or inflammatory bowel situation, nutrition. We want to have foods that are as nutritious and power-packed as we possibly can.
And my remaining question is a comment you made about lactose intolerance.
Okay.
You said maybe by using more lactose,
We're able to.
goes down. Yes.
So lactose intolerance is a disorder of the ability of the body to use lactose because we're not producing enough lactase, the enzyme of digestion. So as we start incorporating small bits of lactose into the diet, the body has to start increasing the production of it. Now, we wouldn't want to sit down and drink 3 glasses of milk at one time if we're lactose intolerant, but using some other products that might have been already been fermented or have like yogurt always seems to be a very acceptable dairy product tolerated by many people. And then we would maybe want to use maybe some of the digestive enzymes. There are lactase tablets and products available for incorporating that.
Thank you.
Sir?
I didn't see it listed there, but is cottage cheese, is that in the same category as yogurt?
As a prebiotic food, no. But it still is in a dairy product, and it's a nice lean meat and well tolerated by many people. So cottage cheese can be a very acceptable food for many people.
My daughter has Crohn's disease, and she does Remicade, which is fine. That I don't have any trouble with her doing that. She's 20 years old. But other types of medications, like taking calcium and vitamin D, and now she's supposed to be taking iron, she just isn't very compliant with doing that. How does one deal with that?
Do you want to address
She's
that?
20. She's away at school, so.
Okay. So again, it's about becoming creative in this case. So first of all, I will start by asking her why isn't she doing it? What's the reason that stops her from really taking her medication? That's one of the things. Another thing will be, okay, what will help you really take your medication? What kind of changes in the environment can we do? Is it like I do, placing the medication next to the coffee machine? Will that, or next to the toothbrush? Is that something? Or should she have, there are some little pill boxes that you can put on your keychain. So I'm sure she has a key that she uses every day, either for the car or for the house, to open the house. So she can have one of those and have a few pills. So even if she leaves the house in the morning and, 12 o'clock comes and she remembers, gosh, I didn't take my calcium or my vitamin D, she can take it on the spot. Some of the medications like the calcium, vitamin D, iron, it doesn't really matter what time of the day you take it, for most part. So, will some flexibility help? It may. However, my experience is that if you build a routine, that it's better. If you really learn to take your medication at a certain time of the day, you pretty much create a neural path there. You are always going to go. That time of the day, you become nervous if you don't have it and you don't follow your routine. Clarifying for her really why does she need to take it? Because if she doesn't understand exactly why those are important, then, of course, she's not, she's going to dismiss their effect, or they will say, well, it's not so important. And so there are some pills that, you can have some flexibility with, but there are some that you really don't have. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think part of it is she doesn't perceive that it makes her feel better.
And a lot of the pills don't, like I talked about the antidepressants, they don't make you feel better at that very moment. It's what benefit can you get out of them by taking them over a period of time. It's like looking not at today, but looking in long run. Okay. Mm-hmm. Any other? Yeah, please.
For Nancy, does your decaffeinated coffee also, is that something to avoid?
The decaffeinated coffee would contain a small amount of caffeine. You can certainly try and tolerate and see your tolerance for it, if you're acceptable with that or not.
Okay, and what if at the same time you're trying to avoid sugar and you said avoid sorbitol? Well, some of the artificial sugars have sorbitol in them.
Yeah, trying to get, or the question was about sorbitol and limiting that. Many of the sugar-free products do contain a sorbitol or some sugar substitute. So maybe using a honey as a sweetener would be an acceptable product for you. Other questions?
Are there any support groups here in Iowa City for people with IBD?
I'm not sure on that, but my best recommendation will be for you to go on the site of the Chronic and Colitis Foundation, and you could find. And another, again, problem solving. I think there are many people who have it, so you guys can start one. I don't see why that cannot happen.
You're watching City Channel 4. On TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.